TunePocket.com. TunePocket.com.
Welcome to the Sean For Real podcast. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. And today, she's back. Grace Peterson joins me on the show. So, you will enjoy this interview. So, let's not waste no time, shall we? Let's get right to it.
Hi.
Oh, hey, I thought you have for got hunting for a show for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten my password, believe it or not. So, I am not good at keeping passwords at all.
Oh.
So that's why I'm a little bit late.
Okay.
So May this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and can you just share your experiences with Mental Health Month, the month of May?
Sure. I feel like every day is mental health for me with what I do. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I did this month. Well, at the beginning of the month, I think it was the beginning of the month, AFSP that we work with, we did a tabling at the Shinedown concert here in Memphis, which if you're not familiar with that band,
Not because I wasn't even aware that there was a concert going.
yeah. Yeah, so Shinedown has been around for a while, and they contacted the foundation to see if we would provide tabling at, I think there were like 3 different concert locations that they did. I don't know what the other states were, but Memphis was one of the stops that they were doing. So we had a large table at their concert. They promoted AFSP during their show. They said a lot of really kind, thoughtful words just about people who struggle with mental health and suicide in particular. A lot of people came to that concert. It was basically sold out, and Shinedown also donated $1 from every ticket that was sold to the foundation. So that was pretty amazing to see. And a lot of people there were really impacted that we were there and really appreciated us being there. We got a lot of donations, so that was great. And then a couple other the things I've done, I guess, is just talking with other providers, attending meetings and things like that, just to keep myself involved in the mental health community. I went to one this week actually for eating disorders. And yeah, every day is like mental health focused for me, I guess, for myself and just because of what I do.
Yeah. Speaking of concerts, there was one held in Nashville last night. It was a country music singer. I don't think I've ever heard of him either, but he was doing some fundraising work for AFSP that I saw. Somebody had posted about it on Facebook. You mentioned that you went to a meeting for eating disorders. Well, this is a little bit of a heavy subject for people to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it even further when I talk about this topic for the video that I'm going to make on the weekend. Sexual abuse and mental health. That's a pretty heavy topic, and I got the idea for that topic because I don't know if you've ever watched Surviving R. Kelly. I don't know if you ever watched that on Netflix. You haven't seen that, have you?
I didn't watch it. I chose not to watch it, to be honest. But I do know what it is.
Yeah. I used to be a fan of his music. Then I watched the Netflix documentary. Then I
Mhm.
completely moved off all of his music. Um, and some of the survivors were discussing some of their experiences. Not going to get into that. Obviously, not going to get into their experiences, but they were talking about how they had to go through depression, anxiety, death threats. Their children are getting cyberbullied. Uh,
Mhm.
they sometimes can't put their kids in school because it's just gotten way out of hand. Um, and I remember this one survivor saying she really didn't think that she was going to make it to 30 because she feels like that she can move forward. And she mentioned how it takes literally everything inside of her not to blow her head off. So what do you what do you think about the connection between sexual abuse and mental health?
That's a very loaded question, I guess. Um, I mean,
Take,
there's a
take your
yeah,
time in answering it. Yeah. Take your time answering it.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a huge connection. The first one that just comes to my mind is like the beliefs that that makes a person feel about themselves and the world.
Hmm.
Certain people in their life. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, just how strongly ingrained a lot of negative beliefs can be, or a lot of negative perspectives. I mean, rightfully so, a lot of the time, unfortunately. Um, how a lot of people, especially those who are affected by it, maybe most, how it impacts their relationships.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the, I mean, there's so many, there's so many places you could take that question, I guess.
I thought you were actually about how to get emo emotional. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about, the people who I know,
Yeah.
and just like the impact of the clients I've worked with, and,
Mhm.
just experiences that I relate to and things like that. Um, I mean, it impacts in so many ways. And I think it even depends more on, what that looks like in particular. Maybe what age,
Yeah.
what who was involved, I mean, there's so many different ways
Hmm.
um that can look. But I think it mainly, like, the correlation between what people go through with sexual abuse and mental health is, of course, the trauma impact, obviously, the health impact that can have for a lot of people, especially maybe thinking of women, um, the relational issues that can bring, the negative beliefs in yourself or the negative feelings toward yourself, blame, shame, guilt, just the whole gambit of the anger. Thinking of, like I said before, like the perspective on the world, not feeling safe in certain scenarios,
Right.
a lot of the time. Um, and I mean, just thinking of like even eating disorders, like a lot of the women that I've worked with, not a lot of them, but I will say a few, have expressed that, like, one of the reasons that if they particularly have like anorexia nervosa and they restrict food, it's because they want to be very small so that they can feel, because a lot of them identify with having abuse in their past. So the smaller that their body is, they think the safer that they'll be because someone won't see them. So they'll be very small. Same for some of the women I've worked with who have binge eating disorder. They think the larger they are, the more unattractive they might be to the opposite sex. And so then they'll be safe.
Mhm.
So it can kind of go a lot of different ways, like I said. And it makes sense to me too that people who, have experienced sexual abuse would maybe contemplate suicide or think about that, because they might not have any support related to that. If they share that with someone, are they going to be believed? Is it safe for them to tell someone that? And I think one of the biggest factors of someone being suicidal is feeling like there isn't another option and that they are alone. And so I think that can really play into it if someone doesn't even feel safe to share their experiences of what they've been through.
Mhm.
But that's just a few of the things that come to my
Um,
mind.
I would just want to go back to what you said about eating disorders for a second, because while you were talking, a thought just popped into my head. I was watching a Darman video. Um, and it was a video about um bullying. And this one lady had gone viral on TikTok for a few dances, and somebody wanted to use her as a face of the anti-bullying campaign, okay? But um secretly she was bullying other people. Um I think who were commenting on her TikTok videos. She was bullying them in the comments. And so there was this person who had gone to school with her, and she had a eating disorder. And she had an eating disorder, and when they were little, she used to make fun of her for a eating disorder.
Mm.
And that's why one of the ladies said that's why she lost so much weight as she got older. And she eventually had to move away from the bully because it was just that bad. But it's amazing how they both grew up, and one is still a bully, and the other is still getting bullied. So there were a couple of viral TikTok videos that went hit viral, and I guess they were doing something like say something in a rap or something, and I can't exactly remember what the woman said, um, but I remember one part that stuck out to me. That stuck out to me. That stood out to me. It said, um, "She made fun of me so much that I wanted to die." And so it was shown to the person who was managing the anti-bullying campaign. The bully grown the bully got kicked off of that campaign, and the one who was being bullied actually got promoted to the anti-bullying campaign.
Mhm.
And so that just so um I just thought about that while you were talking. Um Suicide prevention, um untreated depression, one of the number one causes of suicide. But I don't think people understand that anxiety can also be a cause of suicide. And anxiety is kind of underrated as it relates to suicide. Do you think that anxiety is underrated as a cause of suicide? Because we hear so much about depression, untreated depression, life situations, but I think anxiety is kind of like dark horse reason for suicide. So, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it could definitely relate to that, especially when, like, a lot of times when you think about depression, you think about the past a lot, not always, because obviously people can, feel that way and experience those symptoms or things about the future. But a lot of times anxiety is related to the future, and not knowing, and just kind of all the ruminating, the worrying, how it can impact our sleep, how it can impact a lot, just a lot of parts of people's lives. Um, so I think there are a lot of things that can contribute to someone feeling suicidal or following through with suicide. I don't think it's just depression. Um, and I definitely think someone feeling anxious or not knowing what they want or what they want to do, I think that those things just blend together so often, that it's not like one or the other, because if someone is, let's say, very anxious about their future and not knowing what they're going to do with the rest of their life, or they're contemplating just like, the world possibly, or something like that, then that might make them feel pretty hopeless, which might relate a little bit more to like the depression side of symptoms and things like that. But I think those two things go hand in hand. I don't think it's just one thing or the other. And a lot of times I think people forget that like depression is a mood, like it's not just a feeling. And so you have to think about all the factors that relate to depression. It's not just one piece. Um, and I think that's something that's important too. But yeah, I think anxiety can definitely be a factor involved. I wouldn't say that it's probably the whole picture, neither as like depression's not the whole picture. And so I think giving education around outside of those things, that's how they impact each other, how they go into play, is an important part of it too, not just like putting them in a box, basically.
Yeah. I had a friend who was going through some heavy bouts of anxiety. And she actually told me what she was going through. I think this I think this may be the reason, but she already had anxiety. She already had anxiety, but after after her dog passed away, I think she had elevated anxiety, higher levels of anxiety. Um, so much so to the point where she wouldn't even leave the bed except for when she had to go to class. So she's in school, but she wouldn't even leave the bed. She would eat in bed, drink in bed, and she never left the bed unless it was for class. And so, and so I believe she had to be on a double dose of anxiety medication. And as it relates to anxiety, I kind of figured that um, pets can be a real soothing part of anxiety. And the first thing that came to my mind was um, I think she I think she misses her dog. I think I think she misses her pet, which may be causing higher levels of anxiety. Maybe other things too. But 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 yeah. Speaking of pets, what are you thinking about the impact of pets on mental health?
Yeah, well, can I say one thing about
Go
what
ahead.
you do? I think it's interesting to think of, again, like just how we define things and how people understand like anxiety versus depression, or how those two impact. Because if you tell someone, oh yeah, my friend can't get out of bed, she's doing everything in bed, not motivated or anything, then someone might kind of label that as depression and not anxiety. So I think it speaks a lot to understanding like what's the root of what's going on. Because Is it more anxiety of like difficulty controlling worry, not being able to focus, feeling, just like that, I can't leave my house because something wrong could happen, whereas like that's more anxiety. So I think it's understanding too, what is kind of the root of what someone's experiencing, because it can be like labeled or judged very quickly depending on what someone's going through, which I think is kind of like another factor that people might not think about a lot. But with that said, along those lines, I do think like even if someone was having a hard time getting out of bed or things like that, a lot of clients I work with even say like if they didn't have their dog to walk or something, they might not even get out of their house, or if they didn't need to like get up to feed their cat, that's like one of the things that gets them out of bed. And so I think that it can be a real motivating factor for a lot of people. I think depending on the kind of pet you have, it can keep a lot of people physically active and like feel like they have to go outside or engage in things.
Yeah.
I also think it can be extremely grounding for people who do have trauma, thinking of like sexual abuse, like you talked about before, or anything like that. If someone is having difficulty with memories or recalling events or sleep or flashback, whatever it might be, having a pet there to be grounding can be extremely helpful. Even for myself, like when I wake up from a nightmare, a lot of the time, I will intentionally like put my feet on my dog because at least he's at the bottom of my bed and I can just like feel him on my feet, and that regrounds me and I can fall back asleep.
Yeah.
So even those types of things can be really useful. And a lot of people too that I've worked with who do have suicidal thoughts, I cannot tell you how many of them do not have support in their life except their animal. And so many people stay alive for their pets.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of people talk about that. And sometimes they'll even try to play out, well, no one else would take care of them, or what would happen if I just didn't come home or no one checked on them. And so it really has kept, I think pets keep a lot of people alive
Mhm.
too.
You know what? Something just popped in my head about pets. I was There was a guy named John Brinkus. Um, he's involved in sports, and I think it was called like sports science or something. Can't remember, but he said he was about to end his life by suicide. So what he said he did was he took the rope around his neck, and actually his dog came and gnawed and kind of like bit at his leg, kind of
Mhm.
like gnawed at his leg or bit at his leg, and he said his dog actually saved his life. So 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 yeah, hearing that was pretty hearing that was pretty amazing, inspiring that um and it kind of lets you know that dogs are really actually really smarter than you think they are. Uh,
They're too smart sometimes. Yeah.
um, so I got to ask you about Ja. What do you think about that?
About what, so clarify which part, because there seems to be a lot of parts.
The welfare check. I was not aware of that until midway through Tuesday that
Mhm.
he posted. I believe it was on his Instagram or Instagram. He said, "Bye," and then deleted it. Um, Police actually had to come and do a welfare check on him. So just what do you do? What do you think about that? People say it was a cry for help. Um, Maybe it was a cry for help, but that kind of raised my eyebrows. That
Mhm.
really raised my eyebrows. So what do you think about that?
I didn't hear anything about it until someone texted me.
Oh, okay.
And so I'd had no idea what was even going on. And then someone texted me and they showed that, they sent me the link to the Instagram thing and I watched it and I was kind of confused. And then they said, the police did a welfare check at his home that morning. And they said, do you think he was suicidal by that post? Um, And I said, well, I can't really say. I said, there's not enough.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know him. Like, I have no other context.
mhm,
Um, and again, it's like, that's a very quick leap for people to make, when that could mean a lot of different things. And I know that his reason why he did that when the police went and checked on him was that he said he was just taking a break from social media. And I guess that was his way of telling people. My thought was, the only thing that kind of made me think, okay, is something more serious going on, is I don't think that police would do a welfare check if it was like a call from someone random, especially on someone who is so in the light as John Morant is.
mhm,
I would think, I mean, I don't know how they operate, so I could be totally wrong. This is an assumption, but
right,
I would think it would have had to be someone at least semi close to him to even give police a relevant enough reason to go check on him,
right,
to actually go to his door and speak with him. Because I'm also certain that they wouldn't have been able to just get through because someone random told them to come there, so that's the only thing that makes me think that there could be something closer happening with him. But again, I have no idea how the police operate those calls or how they go about, reports and things like that. Other than making a wellness check call before, I don't know how it works on the other end. And so I don't know. I mean, there has been a lot going on with him, but I think it's hard to speculate when it's things that are all being delivered by the media. Um,
mhm.
and things like that.
That's true. That's true.
So I don't have too much of an opinion on that part, other than I think it would have had to be someone close to him to think that there was an actual concern of some kind. What that concern would have been wasn't necessarily that he was feeling suicidal. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
I remember I was taking it was back in 2019, and it was sort of like a suicide prevention training course that I took with other people, and I went there as a representative of the Memphis Crisis Center, and they were talking about um I guess you know you have to when people are thinking about ending their life, you really have to listen. You really have to listen, so you can, I guess, look slash hear slash look for um something unusual. um I remember a situation with my best friend. She was just going through a really rough time, and I know she was trying to get some funding to try and feed her kids. And so I said, let me know how that goes. I know you're trying everything in your power to provide. And she ended up texting me back saying that it that she wasn't able to get she wasn't able to get like funding, I guess. And so she texted me how much of a failure that she thought she was, because she wasn't able to get resources for her kids who are actually grown now. Um, and so she said, I remember her saying, I'm going to be down at the river. I'm going to be down at gonna be down at the Riverside Drive near News Channel 3. And as someone who tried to end their life, as someone who has thought about ending their life, I'm talking about myself, my ears kind of perked up. And so then she said she was going to be down Riverside Drive at the river. I'm like, uh Riverside Drive, River. So I just came out and asked her. I said, "Are you thinking about ending your life by suicide?" And she said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm just gonna be at the river, just thinking." And so I said, okay, because my ears like really perked up. And she eventually, she immediately texted me back saying that he was sorry, um, that that I thought that she was going to end up taking her life, but yeah, that's just an unknown situation um where anything can happen. And I just think it's important to know, like you said, with Jaw. Hang on, this thing. Yeah, something just popped up. I had to exit out. Anyway, but you said with Jaw, he said he was taking a break from social media. Um, if that was his intention, I think that's a big sigh of relief for everyone. Um,
Mhm.
I know when I asked my friend, um, was she thinking about ending her life, and she said, "No, no, 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 no." I was like, "Yes, yes." Um, so 988. Um, um, there has been a real uptick in 9988. Ever since they converted it to a three-digit number. No, they say it's kind of like 91911.
Mhm.
And so I was just I was just thinking about this a long while back. I do volunteer work at the crisis center. So I just asked, so I just asked Mike, Mike, Mike Bahante, who does the training for the crisis center volunteers. I said, um, when somebody calls the crisis center, um, those who are in like a mental health crisis, are we the first responders? Okay. And he said, um, I can't remember what he said, but he replied with one answer, and then he actually said, yes, we at the crisis center are actually first responders for mental health, mental health emergencies. I don't know what you consider yourself like a first responder for mental health. Um,
I've never thought about it that way
yeah.
before, to be honest, because when I think of a first responder, I think of like a police officer, a firefighter, an EMT worker, things
Oh,
like
yeah. I never thought of as myself as a first
yeah.
responder, but
I mean, I
uh,
guess if I'm taking that word very literally,
yeah,
like a first responder, um, then I guess I would say so
yeah.
in that sense, I wouldn't put myself in that same category as other first responders of how I
There
define
you
them
go. There you go.
that way. But I mean, I guess if it's literally taken into that context of, well, yes, if someone reaches out to me in a moment of crisis and they're feeling suicidal and I'm the first person to respond,
Yeah,
um, then I am kind of in that sense, but I don't think to the same level as maybe other
yeah,
first responders, and the other senses of the word, because I wouldn't want to, you know,
yeah.
um, I feel like there's different severities of what people might go through at different levels and things like that. But if someone reaches out to you first and you're the one responding, then I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm about to be really transparent here. Um, so I was reading something the other day, and it was talking about things that you do, positive things you can do to counter your depression versus toxic things you can do to counter your depression. Um, I know for me, um, let me just give you a quick example. I was heading to dinner one night, and suicide was really on my mind. It was really on my mind. So what I did was I said, well, okay, how about you just listen to music that can like really extract what you're feeling, that can really extract what you're feeling. Just give it a shot. Give it a shot. It may work. So it did. Um, Listen to a few songs. Talked about loneliness, breakups, and needless to say, it re- really worked. It worked. So, but especially when I was younger, I would turn to what I call addictive behaviors, which was porno, believe it or not, and strip clubs. Okay. And porno is what they call a addictive behavior. Um, I was addicted to it for a long while. Um, just now, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that it just started to get boring. It just started to get boring. Um, what would you say the correlation between addictive behaviors and mental health? And I'm actually going to give you the final word on this.
Okay. Addictive behaviors and mental health. Well, another loaded question for me.
Take your
Um,
time. Take your
the
time.
the connection between them. Well, I think they definitely feed each other, you
Mhm.
know. I think one of the things that maybe people wonder about a lot is like, was it that the addictive behavior come in response to depression, for instance, or did depression, was that something that, led into the addictive behavior? And so I think that's something that people, consider a lot of the time. But I think for most people who identify with addictive behavior, whether it's pornography, whether it's gambling, whether it's, substance addictions and things like that too.
Well, for me, sorry to cut you off, but for me, um, I love to see girl on girl action, and that was a addictive behavior that had its hooks in me. Real, it really had its hooks in me. But go ahead.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, for so many people, it can be a really confusing thing too. And it can be a really hard thing to get out of because it's controlling the reward system in our mind. Maybe at some point it's giving us some sort of like chemical boost and things like that too.
Yeah,
But I think a lot of times, especially when it gets to a point of, it's not giving someone what they need anymore, they
yeah,
can usually be extremely self-destructive, depending on what the addiction looks like or what it's related to. And then of course it kind of is like it's cyclical, right? So let's
yeah,
say someone is feeling depressed, so they think, oh, let me, go to pornography or go get a bottle of wine or go to the casino, whatever it might be. But then if you're feeding whatever the addiction is, then usually what's going to come after that are probably consequences of that addiction. And again, those can look really different. But thinking of just a couple might be like shame, guilt, impacting people's relationships, that impacts their support. Maybe it impacts their work or their school, and then that's just going to kind of like drive right back into the depression. So I think that it's a very cyclical pattern and dynamic that goes through whatever the addictive behavior is, depression, whatever else we'd want to kind of think of there. I think they just roll into each other a lot of the time.
Okay. All right. Good. Good stuff. You actually sound like a psychiatrist. Uh, so I don't want to get cut off again. So anyone who is struggling, please reach out and 988 hope. And it was good to talk to you again. I'm gonna say bye bye to you so we don't get cut off again.
All right. Good night.
Right, thank you. Thank you.